We're going to talk about fight number 2 out of the many types of fights that we have, but we're focusing on 3 for the series. So this type of fight is the need for competence, respect, and recognition. We're going to talk about managing environments. We're going to talk about ethograms and communication. Applying the tools as opposed to last session, focusing more on like building that character quality and what it means to maintain it. Recognition, validation, and respect, those are the needs we're looking at today. How people change or how they perceive change and what's ideal. So some people, they repeat what they experienced. So-and-so did this growing up. All I know is how to do this. And we have, people do a 180. So they, grew up angry and now they're choosing to not do anger ever again. Which is it's a logical path for, it's like, okay, just don't be angry. But that does create, secondary issues or, other problems where if you can't allow yourself to feel something, it'll manifest in another area. It'll come out in certain ways and so on and so forth. And so what are we doing here? We have integration where we understand the past, so like, what happened, and we're creating a better self for our relationships. Communication does not have to be perfect, but rather a patience around refining what partner A said and how partner B received it. Managing environments. So I take this from my book a bit. We had we were tasked with creating a zoo, and then the zoo we had to have the animals and the environments, temperature, and all that jazz. It was a group project, a group affair over a course of about 3 months. Everybody had their duty in this relationship dynamic in the group. And, the problem comes when everyone has their duty, but when people take on more than they can handle in the forms of problems. Is partner A taking on more issues than partner B, or vice versa? And so we want fairness when people have an even share of work. And it's hard to even have that, but we can get as close as possible to it. And, setbacks happen. So everybody has, grief or family issues. Someone lost a job, things like that. So if we make this analogous to our relationships, where something happened and somebody had to pick up a bit of the slack, if you will, what were some things that came with your relationships? What setbacks have you had to where either yourself or your partner had the setback? Either one of you guys had to pick up more of the slack than the other person.
In general, it can create like resentment if one person's doing more than the other.
Would it be the same narrative if different backgrounds of how they grew up can play into effect of how they respond to a person now that they're older, like they're using their same parenting techniques that their parents use to do correction versus how things should be adjusted as an adult?
There are cases where, certain people, they grew up where their parents kind of handled a lot of responsibilities in the home, like washing clothes and dishes and yada, yada, yada. And so chores were kind of like a setback for some folks where you didn't realize till you moved in with this person that they had certain things that they just didn't do at home. And now you're expecting them to kind of pick up some slack where you're already having a busy schedule. Life is hit a little hard. And then you guys are kind of going at it. So that's a good example. Yeah. And so we look at, what's your stuff plus my stuff equals our stuff. We have to take on different loads than initially agreed upon. And again, we have expectations in the beginning, live together, we're finding out more about each other, and we're like, oh, it seems like I'm doing more of this than you are. And I'm like, that resentment is coming in like you talked about. And we want to kind of reduce that. So in addition to fairness, where everybody has an equal share of work, we got to change the way we kind of fit pieces of the puzzle so that we're most effective. Equitability is another term that we can apply here. Everyone takes on a different quantity of work to benefit everybody. I love doing the dishes. You hate folding towels. Um, I could take on some of the towels. I could take on some of the dishes, but I really hate vacuuming. Can you do that? But I might also love doing some of the yard work. That might be my whole thing. You ain't got to touch the yard at all. And so I have a little more work. You do some work, but it complements me because it's like I don't like doing some stuff you pick up. So you kind of find your specialty within the dynamic, disperse your work where you kind of fit. So more or less responsibilities means, more room for problems associated with validation, recognition, and respect. So when we talk about validation, I had a long day at work. I really don't want to do this. Can you pick it up? You didn't have a long day at work. I had a hard day at work. That's like invalidating somebody's experience, saying that what they're putting out is not true, and we're not recognizing their side. We're not respecting the way they're coming, where they're coming from, and then we got a shouting match. So the breakdown of the couples through mishandling disagreements can lead to a lack of effort, relational uncertainty that can be a cycle to the point where, which people just don't engage in the relationship. If there's lack of effort, there's more uncertainty. If there's more uncertainty, there's lack of effort. So you got this cycle of like, I didn't do this and I'm not trying anymore and I'm gonna try even less. So we kind of get in that. We don't want to have that. And when there is a conflict in the group, in terms of like that zoo group we were talking about, we applied equitability. So we sought understanding for the circumstances. I understand what you're going through. Let's look at what that is, and we communicate to plug in any holes in the game plan. We validated the person's experience from the setback, whatever it is. We've all had school group projects somewhere, so we all got work we designated for each other, designated for everybody has this thing to do, that thing to do. And then, that one person that's got like all kinds of catastrophes. I'm not speaking to anybody who's watching this in the future, but, there's always somebody who's, they're sick, they got a headache, they couldn't do it, they're late to turn the stuff in, and, it's just like, oh, this guy, right? So somebody else has to pick up the slack where they fall short. This is where communication is like, it's so important. And where we come to understand that, like, okay, if I was sick, I might handle it differently, but we're not all the same. Let me put my, different lenses on and validate what they're experiencing and provide reassurance like, I got you. Okay, when you're feeling better, can you do this? Can you, do a little tweaking to this, look over this, even after you do it? So it is imperative that we are focusing on our designated tasks, that we're, the individual responsible for fulfilling the whole, the relationship. And again, this slide is more pressing on like, your stuff, my stuff, our stuff. It's not that we're separate. It's that we do things to support the relationship, and it's not just some, arbitrary thing that has no weight to, what we're doing. And I put it in the frame of chores, but it leads in other ways where, you have finances and, things like that, responsibility with children and discipline. And so where do groups go wrong? Lack of communication, just stop talking. Competence, the ability to handle tasks. Persistence, in tackling the issue. And the level of care that somebody has for the work that they're doing or we're doing. So allow others to be strong where you, pick up where you were weak. And I constantly bring up this concept of like, sharing responsibility, because if I am really bad at this and you're better at this, then how do we kind of manage that? Can we stay on task without it falling apart? Can we be persistent on the issue? And it's not to be super aggressive, or if your partner needs to break and to walk away for a little bit, it doesn't mean to go, chase them down and shackle them so that they can talk about this and handle this problem. It's not what it means. But it's, how can you not let the leaky ceiling stay leaky? What kind of frame of mind are we putting there to prevent that? And care. Care goes back to the uncertainty. It goes back to the effort. Care. How much do you care? How much do you guys really want this? Everyone's grade, they're bound and affected by each other. Their performance impacts their grade point average, analogous to life's overall success. And so we have that final project you got, and the final project is do this, and the professor's like, the grade you get is the grade everybody else gets. And this grade point average is the relationship, where your guys' performance as a whole affects the quality of the relationship, the quality of the connection, and how difficulties are handled. And so we talk about ethograms. I'm nerding out a little bit. So ethograms, they're ways to track behavior, but we use it for animals. But I'm gonna use it for us. So we're gonna call it personal development trackers. And these development trackers are, things we want to work on, replace. And self-awareness is the start of a lot of change for people. Self-awareness is the key for adjusting and adapting so that we're better for our partners. Now, if we don't know what we're doing wrong, or if we're not aware of what we're doing wrong when we're doing it, we're not as effective as we could be. So the task right now is to make a list of the things you know for sure you need to change. You're gonna track yourself throughout the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And for homework for you guys, each of those very things you do throughout the week, you wanna see how often you do it. You can probably time it, what time of day you did it, what was the circumstance, why you did it. It's a little lengthy, but if you were to kind of break it down, for day of the week, you put a time frame for it, whenever it happened, 2 p.m. I got on the phone and yelled at him because he didn't bring the lunch or something, whatever, I don't know what it is. And that's something you want to change. And we want to be honest with the things that we do, because it shapes the way that we carry over certain problems on your
reaction response.
reaction.
Be so quick to react without understanding their side of view, or how they may have questioned something you have done, or may have not adjusted as quickly as they would have liked you to.
I like that. So adjusting our reaction to our partner's response. Okay, that's a good one. Sometimes we got to take a step back and analyze where they're coming from, the why, X, Y, and Z. That's good.
Pretty perfect, so I'm just kidding.
Oh, you have no problems, huh? You got it. All right, raw perfect.
Emotions, when they have an opinion that they're giving off of something that they foresee that we don't see.
One more time.
Okay.
Now, I heard you, but I just need that, because I missed it.
Removing your emotions out of, say if they gave you a task to do.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't see your opinion on that task that you gave me. I don't see your direction and why you're telling me to go left when I think I'm going right because that's the right direction. So basically removing your emotions, taking a step back and not having not choosing a side, just trying to see their opinionated side versus what you think is right or wrong.
Okay, I dig it. That's good. You look like you're really thinking over there. Yeah.
It takes some adjustment. You gotta be comfortable with allowing yourself to adjust, so that way it's a neutral ground.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm perfect going once. I'm perfect going twice. Okay. What's up? What you got?
You tracking yourself.
Yeah.
Who notices the growth?
Your partner.
Absolutely not. This is
No?
not. Hold on.
Okay.
Just for the conversation's sake.
Yeah.
This list is a personal track of worst us. Now, us would be individually, everybody in the situation, individually, the worst of themselves. To
Yeah.
be better. So, if you working on yourself to be better, I wouldn't expect a response to come from the other side if they don't know you measuring your growth yourself. So I don't know if you discussed the growth with somebody else for it to actually be effective. And I think it will be more effective if everybody's involved with the tracking. if you don't even want to involve, just kind of, you know, you'll see a personal growth. That's why they write that. Because it takes the other person to kind of see that growth and a change. Because it's absolutely futile if you're doing that one thing that is the worst of you, and they don't recognize that maybe it wasn't you.
True.
Okay.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about adjusting yourself personally to be a better person. And all I'm saying is it sounds great, but if we got a personal development tracker, we'll check in the personal development growth.
It should be a self-check.
I
I see what you're saying. It's guaranteed the stuff you don't
Yeah.
want to love it. But now you seeing that you actually not responding the same way. And in fact, you got a log of it for 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 6 months. And the question now becomes, who noticed all that growth? Because you actually put the intent and effort into it. And if it's not seen by the person in the relationship, was it still worth it? You know what I'm saying?
I'm responding. Okay, I'm responding 2 ways. Clinically, I work with older guys and couples, and we've worked on things that they've wanted to adjust on, and they've come back saying their partner recognized this. They started eating as a family more. They went on some dates. They go to the gym together. Stuff that they haven't done prior to being in the turmoil, right? And on the other end, it's a personal development tracker. This is for you. Regardless of what anybody else sees, you know for a fact, I stopped biting my nails, 3 times on Tuesday, in the afternoon. We had a meeting or something, so it's that where you kind of figure out where you're, you need some fine tuning in whatever's going on. So what is the worst part of you? We kind of went to do this without being on this slide, but so you're not the bad guy. We are good people with some things to fix. So those negative thoughts, those behaviors, those responses to what is happening to you, those very things we want to look at and, fine tune, tweak, whatever it is.
You do know I still go to school full time.
I do. Hit me with it. What you got?
Class is pretty much, is humanity blank? To you, what do you believe? Humanity is generally blank. Is it flawed? Is it good? Is it evil?
Okay.
And dude kind of was saying, I think we all come as good people, and we just gotta, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's good. This is a good question, and it just worded differently to make the individual reading it and not feel targeted.
Yeah, it's also the idea that you can be easy on yourself regardless of what the problems you have. It's not that you gotta, because some people really nail themselves to the coffin with what they did in the past and how bad they were and some of the stuff they did, and we're good people. Some of us in environments that weren't so favorable to us encountered some folks along the way that did some bad things to us, and without certain knowledge or tools, we kind of developed some habits, ways of thinking, behaviors. It affects our emotionality and things like that. You're not a bad person. But now it's about refining based off of what you have learned, and making some changes. And so it's acknowledging that as we're in our relationships too. We mess up. And sometimes we do things and what's the apology like, if there is one? What's the conversation like about the particular issue, if there is one? And that's what we're kind of getting into today. But before that, we want to figure out where we're kind of lacking so that we can be able to use the tools. Would you trust your son with a sledgehammer to hit a tire for some exercise? Or is it just going to bounce back and knock him in the...
A kid transfer track, he go shop and this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
there's that chance where you're just
things
yeah.
He's a comfy kid, so a lot of times I worry about it. I would let him go, but
yeah, you wouldn't trust him with a sledgehammer.
no. But when I tell him he couldn't do it, no.
Yeah.
I'll be over there worried.
Yeah. And the idea is not to call them out. The idea is we might have an inkling that you're okay with using these tools, but I want to prepare you to use it. I want you to know that you're well equipped to apply what we're about to do, because without the personality and the temperament and the character qualities to go with it, it falls flat. And then people come back to me sitting in my chair talking about something that didn't work. You gotta have that inside of you. You gotta have it ingrained. Again, with the ethograms, we're kind of going back to what are the particular thoughts, behaviors, or responses you have. In what circumstance was this thing kind of coming into fruition? And I honestly gave this a good shot. Like, I put it out, but I was like, I try it. And when you're this honest with yourself, words on paper, you're reading it back to yourself, you're gonna be like, yeah, I really got, I'm tripping. I got some things to fix. I am. But I got some work to do. So part of this is having that honesty with yourself, because a lot of the time it's like we're not necessarily mentally there and clocking ourselves. And because we're not, we don't see it even when other people do. So we're looking in the mirror. Many people say this is how I am, what I do. We then run with the risk of complacency and therefore, deterioration of the relationship from the overgrowth of negative qualities. Now that we are aware that we need to do the work, the ways to change our behavior by replacing them with something much more positive, productive, constructive, to have a stronger relationship. For example, if you have a bad thought, every time someone gets loud, for instance, we shift thinking and seeing them as something to be, heard from their pain as opposed to someone attacking me. And so it'd be like a bit of a reframing of mind. Your partner's kind of yelling, shouting at you, all this other stuff. And it's not that they want to hurt you, they're trying to alleviate pain. And that's a way of kind of reframing it. How's that positive, constructive, or anything else? It is positive and constructive in a way that, you go from picking up your sword to, okay, let's listen, let's kind of work it out, let's see where things are at, and make a shift. And in the session last week, we talked about, being the doormat, being somebody who is a pushover, even when we're respectful, understanding, and we're compliant. When we're perceivably being attacked, or maybe it is an attack, we kind of lose the positive essences of ourselves, and then we have the overgrowth of negative qualities to a particular issue. And that's what we want to kind of reevaluate and adjust within ourselves, so that when a conflict does arise, we can rise to the occasion and do what we need to do. So tolerance, point out the positive aspects of negative behavior. You balance each other. Fake negative behaviors at home between sessions to see how silly it is when you do it. So this is an exercise that therapists use to kind of, for the people who say that they can't control this, or it's just kind of this impulsive thing. All right, well, plan it. You bite your nails, 2 p.m. on Tuesday, you're going to bite your nails. Set an alarm, put a reminder to the phone to say bite it, and then you're gonna be like, I don't feel like I need to bite it. And then eventually it's the idea is you'll build a frame of mind where it's but okay, maybe I can't control it. And the pointing out the positive aspects of negative behavior. Yes, you yelled at me. I heard all the swear words, but at least you came to me. At least you talked to me. At least you had frustration that you had and you wanted to let it out. And of all the people, he came to me because he felt safest. It could or could not be true, but we're pointing out the positive aspects of the negative behavior. So promoting, tolerance through self-care, headed to a gathering, instead of waiting for your partner to get ready or waiting in general. Let's go separately. It's not manipulation. It's just making this easier on me. Not to gender stereotype or anything like that, but let's say a lady's just taking a while to get ready and you're like, I'm ready to go. I'm hungry. I just want to be there. Let's party. And she's going to take an extra 45 minutes. And by the time you get there, it's going to be, and you telling her, you know what? I'm gonna leave because I want to go enjoy myself and have a little bit of a time. I know you'll be there. This ain't me trying to rush you. This ain't me trying to call you out on your timing. It's just like, we gonna go separately. You come when you come. You'll be all dazzled up on your own time. We're not rushing each other. So we're promoting tolerance for each other in different ways. What does that look like? And, how do we make this kind of work for us?
I've done that before and somebody took it as sarcasm. Like I was trying to be funny without addressing the issue straight on head.
Yes. Okay. I can see that. I can see that. It's something you got to communicate ahead of time. It's a ground you got to put a basis for and a rule book you got to have ahead of time, because then it does look like manipulation. Then it does look like sarcasm. So be proactive. It's my advice. What you got? Oh, okay. Anybody else on Zoom? I've been chatting for a while. So any thoughts on that?
So is it like walking away basically and then coming back kind of thing? Like go and walk away, take a breather, and then come back to this?
It's not necessarily taking a breather, like a coping mechanism. It's making an agreement so that everybody is happy. If I leave earlier and get to the party without having to kind of wait on X, Y, and Z said person, it's easier on me because I don't like waiting. That person knows I don't like waiting. Do what works for everybody. It's not like I'm angry. It's not like I have a problem, It's not any of that, but it's just a way we can kind of, how do we find what works for us? So it's thinking a little outside of the box. If you didn't have this kind of ground rule for each other, Miss Hart had an example here where it was kind of like it was perceived as sarcasm. What can prevent that is just talking beforehand, having a kind of framework of how you want to deal with certain things. And it might come as you come across certain things. Like if this is a case where it just kind of sprung up, then talk about it after and just be like, hey, I think this will really help us kind of just, be on an even playing field with emotions and all that stuff. So we're not butting heads about timing, because not everybody's the same. We all need different things. Yeah, it's not some because what it does turn into is if it's not something that I described, it can become a fight or a way to it's perceived as something that's emotion regulatory, you're just kind of leaving to ease yourself. It's not that. If you use it in the way I was kind of describing. We tend to put survival strategies in front of vulnerability. Change comes when, someone disrupts that cycle. Someone has to change their response to the other person's survival strategy. And so, what are survival strategies? Survival strategies are rationalizing poor behavior. We do things to we gaslight, insult, we raise our voice, get a little close in the face, and we're kind of just we do things to kind of prevent pain, and which in turn causes us a lot more issues in the relationship. We do things that aren't conducive to, growing together. And what will help us is vulnerability. Expressing, being, honest and genuine with our expression, and not necessarily looking to antagonize or to find a way out of the issue, or, looking for that way to kind of ease the pain. Those effective defensive mechanisms that we use to deal with the conflicts. Instead, put vulnerability in place. Both people, I encourage, this is, they have to do it. The two people the couple has to be engaged in that, because what can happen is one person's being vulnerable, they're expressing themselves, and the other person is not quite there yet in terms of reaching vulnerability. They're relying on survival strategies, and we got a disconnect where it's when I'm pouring my heart out, I'm telling her this and that, and she's just doing this, and I'm I don't care anymore. It's best if two people are on the same page with regards to that. So vilification can't happen. The other is just not different, they are also deficient. And what's opposite of us, when we talk about, acceptance and things like that, we often find differences to be something that's a problem. Something that's, you leave your socks on the floor. I hate socks being on the floor. You suck. You're lazy, this and that, blah, 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 blah. Just because they're different from us means that there's something wrong, and we want to get away from vilification. So understand your survival strategies, the things you use to defend yourself, the things you use to get away from a conflict, and then replace that with vulnerability, and that's how you break the cycle. But you two got to be on the same page. We got Gottman's 7 dangerous signs. So when you're talking about an issue, this is how it can go wrong if one of these are implemented, or a couple of these. A harsh startup, you come out hot and strong on the issue, you're defensive, as you have the right to do as you please. But how can we do this a bit better? So we want a gentle startup as opposed to a harsh startup. We set the stage for a better discourse. We're not coming off popping at the mouth. The tone, we gotta watch it. Our amplitude in our voice, let's look at that. And then we're gonna look at some other things later, like physical presence with the body language. What can help with this issue, if talking about an issue is like a problem in the first place, it can help to ease a bit of the pain or the anxiety or, hesitation by setting an appointment. So we got a problem now. Let's talk Friday, 5 p.m. We're both going to be relaxed and calm and collected. We're going to sit right at the dining room table. We're just going to talk about this issue. So it takes away from the surprise element sometimes that comes up with talking about an issue. You know how we do. We're just like, you know what I was thinking? Blah, 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 blah. So here you go again. Blah, 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 blah. All that stuff. So we want to avoid that. And setting appointments to talk about issues can help. So the 4 horsemen, you probably heard of before: criticism, but like the behavior, the character, that person's behavior, that person's character. Defensiveness, it's like, I gotta guard myself against this person. Stonewalling, I'm not even engaging in this. I don't want to talk about it. Bye. Contempt, it's like, I really hate this relationship. Get me out of here. I'm holding my partner in warm regard. I don't like them. So we want to look at these 4 things and how, if we're presenting those, or if our partner's presenting those, let's see why that is. Let's engage the nuances behind it and have a talk about how we can shift our responses, shift their responses, and so on. So flooding is another one of Gottman's signs. Psychological arousal. All gas, no brakes. Just gotta give it to them, and that's it. It's no stopping. And then there's failed attempts to repair. That's another kind of like warning sign. It's like, you make a joke, you get the roses, you get the flowers, you get the cake. It's like, that's nothing's working. So the attempts to give a white flag, to decrease the issue, it just doesn't work. That's a bad sign. Bad memories, telling stories that reminisce the negative aspects, memories in the relationship. That's another one. So it's just like, that problem we had, you're just kind of focusing on those issues, and that's the only thing coming up. Is not much outside of that. Some ground rules to help us deal with addressing issues, addressing concerns. No judgment, Godly signs, no criticism. We're not throwing threats. We're not saying you can't see the kids or this and that, and you can't do whatever on Friday night. You can't go bowling, or I don't know, whatever it is. No rage baiting. We know that certain things tick people off. Even if we're kind of working to be a better person, we're not trying to antagonize or find a reason to get them riled up just because we're a little fired up too. So we're keeping the temperament of a calm and steady. We want to make sure that our temperament is, calm for both of us. If we're heightened, we're not in our most logical mind. If we're heightened, we're not necessarily being our best self. And it degrades memory when we're more in our emotional exhaustion or emotional heights, we don't remember as much. And you probably remember if you're asking your parent or somebody, a loved one or so-and-so friend, and you're like, you remember when you said this when you got mad, or you did this when you got mad, and blah blah blah. And they're like, no, I don't remember that. I did that. I said that. It was like, yeah, you did. You know why they don't remember? Because they were on like 1,000 when they were angry. They weren't thinking straight. So, number 6, don't serve triggers. Don't be the person that's like, the hot topic is, so and so's relative, a death, a previous relationship. Do not serve the trigger. You know that thing is very soft in that person. Why push that button? Probably to feel better, probably to, ease some pain in yourself and all that, but that's not the goal. And then don't feed into triggers. We know that we're not trying to serve triggers. We know that they might be trying to slip a little something in there to find a reason to walk away from the argument, to exacerbate it so that way they feel better and they can make sure that they get one up on the scoreboard, which we don't want anyway, but we don't want to feed into our soft spots, our triggers. We want to make sure that we're staying in control. We do that by emotion regulation. We do that by understanding our partner, understanding the situation, and fixing our minds towards a peaceful orientation, a peaceful direction, a happiness direction, as opposed to, hell and high water. So don't force or take a break if you have to. Well, it's, some people have the idea that they should fix it now. They should, we gotta tackle this at the moment. And all parties gotta be on that same page. If they're not, then it's gonna be a problem. Because you got one side where they're kind of just like, let's fix it now. And the other person's like, I can't do this right now. I'm overstimulated. Just let me go. Let me be. I'll process it on my own. Don't force. Take a break if you have to. Let it go. Oh, any questions on that? I'm kind of moving around. Any questions?
Is that where you consider to have a safe word to know when that person is overstimulated?
Yep, a safe word is whatever you guys kind of put a groundwork beforehand. Your safe word is blueberry. And, that's the word to be like, okay, relax. Take a step back. And another thing we have here is like separate the person from the problem. Sometimes we look at what people do or say and this and that. We're not tackling the particular issue tied to that person, but we're tackling the person, their humanity and everything else. Somebody likes to curse and say you don't like that, and they're just like, you're a terrible person, your vocabulary sucks, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, we don't want to do that. We want to attack the cursing, not the person. So as a reframe, that would be like, I really don't like cursing. It's just hard on me. I have a tough time dealing with that. Can we just please be, devoid of all that stuff? Okay, for the listener, one mic, one voice. If you're the one listening to your partner, let them have the floor until they're done. Do not interject as much as we culturally might want to, because sometimes I might be sitting silent and they're like, why aren't you talking? I got to absorb what you're putting out. I got to listen. And I'm not trying to listen to respond and find a rebuttal. Let's get a ground for how we're going to communicate. So no sighs, no eye rolls, no walking away mid-conversation, unless we got that break we agreed on. No defensive posture, no phone, because that disconnects us from really hammering away what we got to touch on. And I don't feel like you're fully present. I'm going to feel disrespected, whatever it is, stuff like that. So be attentive, show care, be open to learning, and find ways to where you can discover something new about the partner. Be willing to try new things, be optimistic. Pessimism creates a cycle of feeling worse, thinking worse. The worse we feel, the worse we think. The worse we think, the worse we feel. We want to avoid that. For the people who, disagree with the last point, you gotta change your perspective on pessimism. So you want to avoid these certain cycles that keep us in a loop to where we're constantly having issues, and then it's unnecessary. So this is not your time to judge for the person who's speaking. You're not trying to put them on jury. You're not the executioner. Handle the conversation yourself. You're a big kid now. I know that we want to have some outside voices, especially the young people, the teens especially. I know that we want to have, second opinions and all that stuff. It's good to get advice. Although, when you got this 2-on-1, when you got this like 3-on-1, 2-on-3, whatever it is, it can create a lot of problems. And the example is using like a rubber band where you have like 3 prongs. And if you stretch one away from the other 2, the 2 are going to be closer than this one over here. And so that's the visual for like how having outside input into a particular issue. I'm not saying don't get advice. I'm not saying don't get counsel. But, you got to be able to kind of stay in the mix and handle the issue. So this is not the time to point fingers, not the time to blame, not the time to find fault. It's not about bringing up past trauma unrelated to the circumstance. Or if it is, it's not the time for that either. So this is a time for self-emptying, for authentic expression, for understanding. And you got to have a goal-oriented perspective in, conversation. What's the goal-oriented perspective? Healthy relationship, happiness, peace. That should be your goal for finding out how we can resolve this thing, staying in the mix, and not finding this trouble. So the feedback wheel. This is what I recollect happening. This is what I made up about it. This is what I felt. This is what helped me feel better. And these are some things you can kind of, add into your toolbox for communication. When we want to express ourselves, sometimes we can't just find the words or a startup for it. So these are pretty good startups to have. So apply these things. So behind every criticism is an unmet need. Now that, now we need to verbalize the unmet need, be curious about the need. What is that need that the partner is criticizing you about? What is the need that you're criticizing your partner about? Like, what's missing for you? What's missing for them? And find out why they're kind of, hammering you about the socks on the floor, hammering you about the wet floors. I don't know. There's some stuff that we just don't like. What is the unmet need that we're kind of just criticizing and finding fault with? So we're going to help partners avoid these language choices. We're not going to exaggerate. We're not going to do the whole, greatest ever, worst ever, always or never. We don't want any of that. We don't want the extremes. And we don't want one-sided arguments, swearing and attacking character, arguing that others do it your way, others agree with you, that you should be forgiven because your partner isn't perfect. We're not doing that either. We want to avoid these language choices to not vilification, to not villainize anybody. We're not going to demonize. We're not trying to see faults or try to kind of make up for it by saying that you're not as good as I am either, you're not doing well either, this and that. I'd do it for you. That's not the case, so avoid that. We're not talking about that. If you love me, you would. That's manipulation. Don't do it. Absolutes, shoulds or shouldn'ts. We're not doing that either. We're not putting hard parameters for flexible human beings. But we're going to work towards finding common goals. Kitchen sink, one topic is in the sink, and then there's a bunch of other things coming in. You talk about wet socks, and then it leads into your mama said this to me at the family gathering, and I don't like the way that you were mowing the lawn, and I hate the gift you got me for Christmas. So Stay on one topic. Stay on one topic. Don't flood it with everything else so that you're off topic and arguing about things that don't really, they matter, but I guess, they're not the task at hand. So challenges for both. Look for the third path. Agree. Find that path. Accept your partner. We want to bond. We don't want to bargain. If you do this, I'll do this for you. Or this is especially the case for intercourse or money and things like that. It's not the conflict that hurts. It's the screaming into silence that hurts. It's not the problem. It's how you deal with it. So emotional responsiveness is key for the future of relationships. Are you there for me? Do I matter? That should be the focus, and not necessarily looking to hurt, looking to cause issues. So the goal of dialogue, growth, grow relationally, grow self-awareness, learn about me by creating agreements with you. Like we talked about, having that rule base, having that place where we can kind of, make agreements on things, negotiate. We don't want to assume, create security and trust. We know what to expect. We set clear boundaries. We build trust that way. We set security so we're protected on both sides. Promote wellness. We are creating something together. Deepen intimacy. I understand more deeply, what you're going through. Have a bill of rights. We're both entitled to feel such and such in a relationship. It's not, our emotions aren't off limits. Our emotions aren't demonized. Our emotions aren't a problem. We can feel it. It's okay. The fallout, we don't want this. We don't want this. We don't want to have topics avoided and taboo. As soon as, in-laws come up, we just fire and brimstone. We don't want to have negative expectancies increase. We don't want alienation. We don't want dissatisfaction. We don't want resentment. We don't want hopelessness. We don't want doubt about the relationship. This is what happens when the conflict is not handled in the best way it could be. So this is the work. This is the path forward. Relationships are hard.